Hi everyone, we're going to talk about arrays in PHP, and you already know what arrays are and you already know what loops are, so we're going to cover all that. Basically just going to point out the differences in between arrays and loops in PHP compared to some of the other languages that you've already learned about. The concepts are the same, you know about those. And by the way, I already recorded this video once, but I manually typed in all the code as I went, and the video got to be super long. So what I'm going to do in this video, just to speed things up, is I'm just going to cut and paste my code snippets, and that way you can pause the video if you need to see the code that I've put in there, so that you can copy it yourself. But I think I want to try and keep the videos short so that you don't have to sit there and listen to me talk forever. Okay, so the file is called arraysandloops.php. Now remember, this has to be in your document root directory, and you have to have your web server up and running, because PHP pages are server side. PHP is a server side language, so you need a web server running. We talked about that in the last video. In the last video I was using an Ubuntu virtual machine. In this video I'm using XAMPP. So if you're in advanced web dev, we're using XAMPP. If you're in advanced topics, we're using an Ubuntu virtual machine with Apache running on it. So hopefully that won't throw you off. But so go ahead and get the file up there. Get everything set up. So you want to have this file open in Sublime Text, and you also want to have it open in the browser too. So right here, I've got the file open in the browser, and there's nothing there. So so you'll see a blank page when you open this up in the browser. All right, let's get started here. I'm going to bounce back over to Sublime Text, and let's get started. Okay. So arrays. There are two types of arrays in PHP, just like there are two types of arrays in JavaScript. There's indexed arrays and associative arrays. Now I'm not sure how long it's been since if you guys have been doing much JavaScript since web programming, so you might have to stretch back and think way back to web programming. But we talked about, you're probably more familiar with indexed arrays. You know what those do. Each element in the array has an index number and it starts with 0. So that concept is the same in PHP. And then associative arrays, we don't use numbers, we use strings, and we call those key value pairs. So the key is a string in associative arrays. We'll create some just to help you refresh your memory. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and quickly create an array here. So right here under line 6, go ahead and type in this code. And what we've got here is I use this function in PHP to create an array. So this function creates an array, and I'm assigning the array to this variable. Remember, variables start with $signs. Okay, so at line 7, I've got an empty array. Now, what's interesting here is, and I actually like this feature, but in PHP, if you reference the array variable followed by empty square brackets, that's how you add an element to an array. So what I'm doing here is I'm to the end of an array. So this will add an element to the array, and the value is going to be hello. So at the end of line 8 here, we'll have an array that's storing hello, and then we're adding another element to the array here, and the value of that element is going to be world. Okay, so there's a handy function that you'll use a lot. It's called var dump, and we can dump out pretty much anything and see the contents of it. So I'm going to go ahead and under this comment, I'm going to do var dump, and then what I want to dump out is that AR1 here. Okay, so now we have some output. We should have some output in the browser. So I'm going to save this. Go ahead and type that in on line 12, and then go over to your browser here and hit refresh. And there you go. Now this takes a little bit of getting used to, but what this is saying here is what we dumped out is an array that has 2 elements in it. At index 0, we have a string that made up of 5 characters. And then here's the value of that first element. And then at index 1 here, we have a string that's also 5 characters, and here's the value of that second element. Now I can do something else here. I'm going to go back over to Sublime Text. I can use a different function, and it's up to you when you're checking your variables and looking everything over. You can use var dump. Another one that you can use is called print_r. So if you go print underscore r like this, you'll get a slightly different format when you dump out your array. So I'll just save that, go back over to the browser and hit refresh. Now in this case, I'm not getting some of the details. I've just got index 0 and its value. So it's not telling me the data types and all that. By the way, in PHP you can mix your data types in an array. So it's kind of like JavaScript. You can store, an array can store numbers, booleans, strings, all mixed together in one array, and you know that you can't do that in other languages. All right. So let's move on down to the next example. So we want to echo out the first element in the array, and I think you already know how to do this. So I'll just go ahead and put this code in here, and so this we're just using bracket notation, and we're using the index number to specify which element from the array to dump out. So if I save that, go over to the browser, hit refresh here, you'll see there's our hello. Now I could put a BR tag in there to put hello on its own line, and we'll be doing that a little bit later just to make things easier to read, but I think you get the idea. Okay, now moving down to the next comment here, adding an element to an array. I showed you how you can add an element by using these empty brackets here. You can also specify index numbers. So I could do this here. So, and again, I'm just copying and pasting code to make it go faster. So this would add another element to our array. So what we'd have is hello world, and then the third element would be this exclamation point. I can also do something similar to change an element in an array. There should be no surprises here for you, but I could do that like this. So that would change the value of the first element from hello to goodbye. Okay, and remember, don't forget your dollar signs when you're working with PHP. Variables start with dollar signs. Okay, what's next? So I think okay, so in the previous arrays that I've been using, we've been gradually populating our array. We added 2 elements here and then added another element here. So we've got an array with 3 elements in it. But what you can do is you can pass parameters into that array function that I showed you. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste this in here. So right here I've got a new array, AR2. I'm using that array function, but now I'm passing in parameters. So this is going to be, my array is going to have 2 elements in it, hello and world. Okay, so you'll see that a lot in PHP, and I think that'll do it for now for indexed arrays. Let's talk about associative arrays. So remember, just to review, associative arrays don't use indexes. What they use are keys, and those keys are strings. So go ahead and copy this code that you see right here. So what I've got is an array, starting off with an empty array here, and instead of using index numbers, I'm using keys. So we call these kind of arrays associative arrays or key value pairs. These start to look a lot like objects with properties, and we'll be using a lot of these in PHP. So this kind of looks like a person object that has a name property, an age property, and a likes pizza property, and a gender property. So anyways, we've added 1, 2, 3 keys to this associative array. The keys are name, age, likes pizza, and gender, and then here are the values. So and we've got key value pairs right here. So go ahead and type that in. Don't forget your semicolons and don't forget your dollar signs. You don't necessarily need to type in this comment. I just put that there to point out that what the keys are and what the values are. Okay, now let's go ahead and when you finish that, let's dump out this array. So let's go var dump in this case, and we'll go AR3 in here. I'll save this and bounce back to the browser and see what we get. So there we go. Now I'm going to put a BR tag in here. Let's go ahead and let me just echo out a BR tag right here. I should make a snippet for echoing out BR tags in Sublime Text because I type it so much. Let me just put 2 of them in there. Okay, we'll just get some separation in our output on the web page so we can see it a little bit better. So I'll go back over to the web page and refresh. So you can see this is what it looks like when you var dump an associative array. It shows you the keys instead of the indexes. And I have to admit, looking at your data like this took me a little bit of getting used to, and it still seems kind of cluttered to me. But anyways, you'll get used to it. So look at this, for example, the likes pizza key in our array. Look at what the value is. It's giving you. That's weird. That's kind of weird. So it's just saying that it's set to true, but it's wrapping it in what looks like a Boolean function or something like that. Anyways, let's scroll on down to the next comment here. So another way to create an associative array. All right, this is going to blow your mind a little bit, and you're going to have to maybe struggle with this syntax, but this is what I want you to type. Okay, you're all seasoned programmers by now, so you know to pay attention to all the little syntax details. But so above we created an array and populated it by passing in parameters to this array function here, and we're doing the same thing here, but in this case what we're doing is creating an associative array. Basically I've got my key value pairs all on their own lines. So the thing that's weird about this is this character, and you'll see this quite a bit in PHP. WordPress uses this a lot, this way of working with arrays. So our keys and our values are separated by this arrow symbol, or to be more specific, it's an equal sign and a greater than sign right next to each other. And that'll take some getting used to. That, to me, that's strange syntax. Why you can't just have an equal sign, I don't know. In JavaScript, this would be a colon when we're creating our, when we're creating objects. Anyways, so go ahead and type in this code here, and we're going to use this array in a little bit here. So all right, looping through arrays. Copy my code here and I'll paste it. So go ahead and type this in. This is a lot like the enhanced for loop in Java. So what we're saying, this is a for each loop. So what we're saying is this is the array that we want to loop through. That's how these things work. So the first item in the parentheses is the array that we want to loop through. And then we have to use this keyword as. That's required. It's got to be as. And then we can use whatever we want for a variable name here. So in this case, I've got X. That's my variable name. Don't forget the $sign. And the X will store the value of each element as we progress through the loop. So in AR2, what did we have in AR2? Where's our AR2? Here it is. AR2 has hello and world in it. So if I go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and copy this here. Just put some BR tags here. So when we run this, what we'll see over on the web page is this. So there's the results of our loop right there. All right, so now how do you loop through an associative array? Now we've seen that there's some funny characters when we're dealing with an associative array, and it's even worse. Well, we'll see those same characters when we loop through an associative array. So I'm going to copy this code sample, paste it in here, so you can pause it and go ahead and type this in yourself. So what we've got here is our AR. Where's our AR3? Oh, here's our AR3 up here. So we're going to loop through the key value pairs in AR3. So back down here, here's the array that we're looping through. Again, this is a for each loop. Then we have to use this as here, just like we did up above. And then what we do is this can be called whatever we want. I could call this X or whatever, but I called it key on purpose because the key for each item in the array is going to be stored in this variable. And then we have this funky character again, and then the value is going to be stored in this variable. So I'm going to go ahead and give us some separation. So I'm going to copy this echo here, and I will paste this right above our for each loop here. and save it, and then go back over to the browser, hit refresh. So here you go. Here's the results of that code running. So we're just dumping out our key value pairs, and I've got these labels here that I concatenated into my string. Okay, and then finally, I guess, yeah, just notice that we put in a BR tag at the end of each loop. So yeah, this takes some getting used to, but this is how you loop through an associative array. All right, let's move down to multidimensional arrays. So you can have multidimensional arrays in PHP, and here's one way of making them. So go ahead and type in this code here. So what I've got is I'm using my array function, and now I've broken this up into separate lines. I could have put these all on one line, but it gets confusing then. But here's the first element in my AR5 array, and look at that. That is an array. Okay, and the second element is also an array too. So you could create a multi-dimensional array this way, but and I don't really care if you don't necessarily have to type this code in, but just be aware of it. But what you'll see is multi-dimensional arrays are much more commonly created in this way that I'm about to show you. So scroll on down to that another way to create a multi-dimensional array. So I'm just going to copy my code snippet here and paste that. So go ahead and type this in real quick. And the reason why I'm making you type this is so that you get familiar with the syntax. So I could have just handed you some code and had you look at it, but that doesn't really help you. I mean, it's better to type the code in to get familiar with the syntax. So anyways, what I've got here is a variable called rows, and I'm assigning it an empty array. And then on the next line, remember we use the empty square brackets to add a new element to an array, and that element is actually another array. So we've got a multi-dimensional array going on here. So this nested array is an associative array, and it's got a name and an age property. The value for the name is Bob, and the value for the age is 21. And then we're actually adding another element to our outer array here in a similar fashion. So go ahead and type this in because we're going to use this one, I think. So the reason I'm showing you this is because this is how we get, this is the structure that data comes back from a database when we do database calls. You can actually specify different structures, but this is a real common one. So when we retrieve rows from a database, it'll come back in this sort of structure where we've got an array of associative arrays, and then you can loop through each row, and then for each row you'll have an associative array, and then you can loop through each key value pair in the associative array if you want. Okay, now we also have a regular for loop, and I'll show you that here. I've got a code sample here that I want you to type in, so I'm going to copy it. All right, so actually before you type this in, I want to show you the count function. So I'm just going to squeeze this in here first. I'm going to do an echo, and then inside the echo I'm going to put a count function, and this is how we get the length of an array. So whatever I pass into this count function is going to be an array. I'm not sure what happens if it's not an array. I'm not sure what happens. A string might give you the number of characters, but let's go ahead and just put AR1 in here. And I'll save that. And so we're used to a length property on an array, but there is no length property on PHP arrays. So I can't do AR1.length. What I need to do if I want to get the length of an array is I have to pass that array into this count function, which takes a little bit of getting used to. But anyways, so now to do a regular for loop, here's the code sample I want you to type in. We'll create this array AR6 and just put some names in it. And then I want you to go ahead and type out this for loop here. So this is just a regular for loop. We've got a counter variable, which is x, and don't forget the $sign. And then instead of saying x is less than AR6.length, we have to use the count function here. So this is basically going to say it's going to evaluate to x is less than 4. So loop, that's how long the loop is going to continue, and then we increment our counter by 1 every time we loop. And then here's what we're going to dump out. We're just going to dump out. Now look at what's going on here. When I was learning PHP, I would always forget my $ here. So I would do this and I would get an error. But remember, our counter is X, and variables have to start with a $. So what we're saying here is X will be the index, and it'll start with 0. And what we want to get is the item at index 0. This will give us the value of it. So if I save this and then hit refresh here, whoa, what did I do? There we go. So there we go. And I think that 3 is what I echoed out from our count. So there's our regular for loop there. Okay, let's check to see if a variable is in an array with this function isArray. Actually, I think I misspoke there. So you can check a variable to see if it is an array. I said in before, by using this function right here. So go ahead and type this code in. I know I'm making you type in a lot of code, but it is the best way to get familiar with the syntax. So go ahead and type this. You know, sometimes you work with data and you're not sure what it gets set to, and sometimes you need to, you know, PHP is very dynamic. That means that you can squirt all sorts of different data types into a variable. So your data types for a variable could change depending on what's going on in your program. So there's quite a few cases where this comes in handy, where if something is an array, then we can loop through it. If it's a string, we can just echo out the string. So anyways, this isArray function comes in handy, and what you pass in as a parameter is a variable, and it will return true or false depending on whether the variable is storing an array or not. So go ahead and type that in. Here's another function. Let's scroll on down here. The implode function. This is the same as join in JavaScript. So this will take all the elements in an array and squish them all together into a single string. So I want you to go ahead and type this chunk of code in that I'm about to paste here. So copy that, paste that. So I've got another array that I'm declaring here. Don't forget your $, and it's got Bob, Sally, Mark, and Betty in it. And then what I'm doing here is I'm basically using the implode function, and then there's 2 parameters to the implode function. First, this is what we call the glue. So this is the elements in the array are all going to get squished together, but in between each element this string is going to get squirted in. So let's see what this gives us. And then the second parameter of the implode function is the array that you want to implode. So this is how you join the elements of an array into a single string. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this. Go back over to the browser. Whoops, right there, hit refresh. So there we go. Oh, here's our if statement, and then here's our implosion here. So if I just view source, you'll see that, I guess that's right here. Anyways, so there's the implode function, which is the join function in JavaScript. Okay, one last function to show you is the explode function, and this will take a string and explode it into an array. So if you remember the split method, this is the equivalent of the split method. So go ahead and type in this code right here. So we've got a string, and it's a comma delimited string. So I'm not sure if you're in advanced topics in programming, we're going to be working with CSV files, which are comma delimited strings, and we'll be parsing data out of them. So you'll see a lot of comma delimited strings. But anyways, what this is saying here is I've got this string in this variable, some string, and I'm going to use the explode function. So the explode function takes 2 parameters. The first is what are we exploding on. So we want to explode this string on the commas. So what that means is every comma is gonna be the separator for each element in our array. So, and then the second parameter to explode is the array that we want to explode. So what this is going to do is we're going to take a string, a comma delimited string here, and explode it into an array. and the elements in that array are going to be determined by where these commas are in the string. So, and then finally we're going to var dump out our array. So I'll save this, take it over to the browser and hit refresh, and I didn't put in a BR tag here, but anyways, here's our array that got exploded from that string. Okay, 25 minutes. That's a little bit longer than I wanted it to be, but anyways, there you go. That's PHP arrays and loops for you.